Is there a cure for diabetes? So many people are confused. They're asking me these questions because a lot of people are getting off medications, they're normalizing their blood sugars through lifestyle intervention, through lifestyle changes. And yet, their doctors are telling them that there is no cure. The official viewpoint is that this is a chronic, incurable disease. So what is it? How can people get these results? Today I'm going to talk about this, and we're going to give you a different perspective, so you're going to have a whole new viewpoint and a whole new outlook on this. You're going to like it. Stay tuned. I'm Dr. Sten Ekberg. I'm a holistic doctor and a former Olympic decathlete. And if you want to truly master health by understanding how the body really works, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss anything. I did some research on diabetes cure, and here's what WebMD.com says. Is there a diabetes cure? With all the research on diabetes and advances in diabetes treatments, it's tempting to think that someone would surely have found a diabetes cure by now. But the reality is that there is no cure for diabetes, neither type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes. So let's just make it really clear that for the purposes of this video, we're talking about type 2 diabetes, which is insulin resistance, too much insulin. Type 1 is a completely different thing, and we'll do some other videos on that, but that is a complete lack of insulin. So they're really two opposites. We're going to talk about type 2 diabetes here. So first we need to clarify some terms. When they say, is there a diabetes cure? What does the word cure actually mean? So let's look at that. So I looked that up, the official definition. Cure can be a verb or a noun. As a verb, cure is to relieve a person of the symptoms of a disease. And they say that a synonym of a cure is to heal or restore to health. So here's the problem. First of all, they think that the cure is to relieve the symptom. They think that if you have cured someone and relieved them of a symptom, then you have healed them. They believe that health is merely the absence of symptoms. Okay? And that's the first problem. They don't understand physiology. They don't understand that diseases develop as a result of a long-term imbalance. For example, a heart attack. If someone gets a heart attack, that's the first symptom. But this person spent 20, 30 years developing the physiology, getting the body out of balance to the point where the heart attack was inevitable, and the heart attack was the first symptom, but they were unhealthy, they were out of balance for 20, 30 years. So lack of symptoms does not mean that you're healthy. But when they're looking for a cure, they're simply looking for a way to relieve symptoms of a disease. That's the official definition. And how are they looking to do that? That comes in the noun. The cure can be a noun, and now they're looking for a substance that cures a disease. And a synonym for the substance would be medicine or medication. So the only way that you can cure something is to treat a symptom with a medication. That is the definition of a cure. Is there a cure for diabetes? No, absolutely not. And we're not interested in a cure. We're going to talk about something completely different. We're going to talk about reversing diabetes. And we're going to talk about 5 facts, 5 truths, 5 realizations that is going to completely change the picture on how you look at these things. First, we have to understand the word cure is not what we're looking for. That the cure is not about reversing a disease, and that's why they will never find a cure, and we'll get into that. There will never be a pill to restore health. There may be a pill to treat a symptom, but again, they're not going to change the underlying conditions. And this is what we're going to talk about. Here's a big one for you. The number 2 fact you have to understand is type 2 diabetes is not a disease. And now you're going, hey, whoa, now you lost me. You made some sense from time to time, but here you're just really getting off. So what do I mean type 2 is not a disease? Well, let's talk about that. And we need to understand a few things as part of that, that it's not a disease, it's a physiological adaptation, okay? It's not a disease because there's nothing broken, there's nothing missing. The body parts are still there, the pancreas is still making insulin, but the body is responding, it's adapting to something. That brings us to part 3, that the body is smart, it has homeostasis. The body isn't random. Everything the body does is on purpose. Everything that gets out of balance in the body is because something is making it go out of balance. Something is pushing it out of balance. There is a principle in the body called homeostasis, and that's the principle of balance. That's the principle of healing, that the body will always attempt to return to homeostasis. Homeostasis is balance. Something pushes it out of balance. As soon as the push is gone, as soon as the pushing factor is gone, the body returns to homeostasis. That's sort of like gravity, that gravity works on water. A spring, a water stream coming down a mountainside will always attempt to bring that water down to sea level. Always, no exceptions. The body will always attempt to return to homeostasis. Just like the water returns to the sea, the body returns to homeostasis. Gravity doesn't work sometimes. Healing doesn't work sometimes. Physiology doesn't work sometimes. It always works. That's just the way it is. It's built into the fabric of nature that your body is designed to do the right thing for the right reasons. If it appears that it's not doing the right things, there is a factor, there's something creating an imbalance. Okay? So we have to get to that understanding of the body's innate intelligence, the principle of homeostasis, and that physiology is this principle, it's these factors, it's the study of these factors that guide healing, that guide homeostasis. If type 2 diabetes is not a disease, then what is it? It is an adaptation. What is an adaptation? It's when your body adapts, it copes, it changes in response to something. So let's take a few examples just to make you more familiar with that. What is hypertrophy? It's when something grows larger. So a bodybuilder, he puts pressure, he puts stress on his muscles. He puts a tremendous stress, repeated many times, many hours a day. And now the body senses, hey, you know, if I'm going to be able to keep up with this work in the future, I have to change. I have to build more muscle. I have to create more muscle fiber so I can cope better with this stress in the future. That's an adaptation. That growing muscle is an adaptation to an imposed demand. We have pushed the muscle and the muscle responds. The opposite happens with someone who's a couch potato. Or if you break your arm or you break a leg and you put a cast on it, now when you take that cast off a couple months later, there's virtually no muscle left. There is atrophy. Because when we don't use the muscle, the body senses, hey, you know, there's not much use for this muscle tissue. If the owner of this muscle isn't going to start using it, I'm going to downsize it. I'm going to down-regulate it. I don't want to spend precious resources rebuilding that muscle if it's not going to be used for anything. Use it or lose it. That's where hypertrophy and atrophy comes in. But everything the body does is in response to something. If you normally live at sea level and you have a certain amount of red blood cells, and then you move up in the mountains at 6,000 feet above sea level, what's going to happen? Your body is going to upregulate the production of red blood cells. So now, all of a sudden, you got 20% more red blood cells. Why? Because there's less oxygen in the air. That's the stress. So there's an imposed demand. Your body needs to make more red blood cells so it can still transport the oxygen when there's not so much of it around. That's an adaptation. It's a physiological adaptation. So what does that have to do with diabetes? Well, diabetes is a late stage result. It's the late stage of insulin resistance. So when we eat things that trigger insulin, primarily sugar and carbohydrates, then insulin production goes up. If we do that 6 times a day, then insulin production goes up 6 times a day. And insulin then starts pushing blood sugar into the cell, and the cell is grateful at first for this fuel, but then eventually when the cell has had enough fuel, it starts resisting. It starts adapting. It's a physiological adaptation because the cell can only use so much fuel. So when there's more and more and more and more coming, what's the cell going to do? It's going to be smart, it's going to be intelligent, it's going to say, enough is enough, I'm going to start closing down the gates so I don't get flooded with all this fuel. That's what insulin resistance is. It's not the body being stupid, it's not the body being random or mistaken or broken or flawed. The body is doing exactly what it's supposed to. When it's being overwhelmed, it's going to try to oppose that factor that's overwhelming. And it's going to become insulin resistant until that avalanche of fuel and sugar starts to pull back. So this is a crucial factor in the understanding of holistic health, that there are no mistakes in the body and there are virtually no diseases. At least not when we're talking about functional problems. When we're talking about high blood sugar and diabetes and digestive problems, we're talking about functional problems. We're talking about imbalances that develop over time because we're pushing the body and the body is adapting to respond. So type 2 diabetes is not a disease. It's a physiological adaptation. It's an intelligent response to an unbalanced environment. And the unbalanced environment is our modern food. It's food that we have never ever seen before. It's carbohydrates and sugar and processed foods in amounts the human body has never experienced, not even close. So once we understand that, number 4 is more obvious. It kind of follows that when they say that there is no cure in the medical world, they're right. Because what would that mean? If the body is always on purpose and it always returns to balance, then a cure would be a way of inventing a medication, a substance that could somehow make the body be happy out of balance. That we keep insulting it with an overwhelm, with an avalanche of fuel, and we expect to be able to create a pill to maintain that imbalance and keep the body happy. It can't work, it won't work, because that would be like trying to find a cure for gravity. We can't do it. There's never going to be a cure for physiology. Physiology is the body's tendency to return to balance. Gravity is water's tendency to return to the sea. We won't find a cure, we can't find a cure because it's not the way it's supposed to be. And if the water is held up by a dam, then it can appear that the water isn't returning to the sea for a while. We can observe an imbalance, we can observe high blood pressure, we can observe insulin resistance and high blood sugar, but the moment that we remove the barrier, the moment that we remove the interference, the factor that has been upsetting the balance, then the water starts flowing again. We don't have to teach the water to flow again. It already knows how. Gravity never stops working. your body's healing, your body's homeostasis never stops working, because it can't. It's built in to the innate intelligence and to the very fabric of nature. But it's easy to understand why there is so much confusion if we have these two different worldviews. If we on the one hand understand the innate intelligence and homeostasis, and on the other hand in the medical world they believe that the body is random and that it's mistaken and that it breaks down for no reason on occasion, that it does stupid things, that it randomly starts resisting insulin. So the official view of insulin resistance is that the cells are no longer responding normally to blood glucose. In other words, the implied statement there is the cells are not responding normally to normal food anymore. And of course, normal food today is 300 grams of carbohydrates, 170 grams of sugar, and the food pyramid with the base being starches. Okay? Of course, if you believe that is normal food, then you're not going to understand anything that we're talking about here. We have to first put the body back in the picture of what is normal food for humans. What have we been eating for the longest time? And we've discussed all these topics in more detail on other videos, so feel free to check those out for the complete version of each of these. So this brings us to number 5. So we started out asking, is there a cure for diabetes? And we've pretty much come up with, based on the medical definition of a cure, no, there isn't. But once we understand that type 2 diabetes is not a disease, it is a physiological adaptation, then number 5 becomes the obvious question: can you reverse a physiological adaptation? Yes. So adaptations are reversible. And once we start understanding this, then all that it comes down to is that we want to reverse the factors that forced the adaptation in the first place. So if you move up in the mountains and start making more red blood cells, and then you move back to sea level, then your body is going to start down-regulating red blood cells because you don't need so many anymore. 20% less will do just fine at sea level. And if you go back in the mountains, it'll start going back and forth, back and forth. It will do it again because it's intelligent. So if the insulin resistance developed because we forced certain things on the body, then the moment we stop forcing it, then it will start returning to homeostasis. It's as simple as that. What does it mean then to stop the factors? It means eat less of the food that stimulates insulin. And what is that? Primarily sugars and processed starches. Any kind of starch really, but especially processed starches. So we want to eat less sugar. We want to be moderate to very little fruit if you're already insulin resistant. We want to cut out grains, both processed and complex, because there's very little difference in blood sugar impact. And we want to start eating more fats, moderate protein, and more whole foods because they have the fiber and they have the whole package of what you need. We also want to eat less frequently, because if you eat something that stimulates insulin and then you do it once, you get one burst of insulin. If you do it 6 times, now you're pushing insulin 6 times. You're giving the cell 6 reasons to become insulin resistant. The longer you go between meals, the bigger the chance, the greater the opportunity for the cell to start burning through some of that fuel so that maybe it gets hungry again. Maybe it will want some fuel sometime in the future. So there's lots and lots of different videos. We've done videos on each one of these, on LCHF, low carb, high fat, on ketogenic diet, on intermittent fasting. So that's about reducing the insulin production and the frequency. And then, of course, you also want to add in some exercise and some stress management, because exercise makes the muscles more insulin sensitive. It gives your body a chance to burn through some fuels besides all the other benefits of exercise and become a little more insulin sensitive. And stress management is because stress produces higher blood sugar. Stress causes cortisol releases, and cortisol raises blood sugar, which raises insulin, and you can actually become insulin resistant pretty much from stress alone. The more of these things that you do, the greater your chance of reversing these adaptations. So don't wait for a type 2 diabetes cure, and understand when they say that there is no cure, understand why they're saying that. They're speaking a different language. They're talking about a substance to reduce a symptom, whereas what you're really looking for is a healing process. It's a reversal of the adaptation. And there's never going to be a pill that can cure, that can fix the homeostasis, because the body is always intelligent, it's always adapting to the imbalance. And if you have an imbalance, then just remove the cause for that imbalance and your body will go right back to doing what it's supposed to do. So both healing and gravity are laws of nature. They always work. Do we know if they're going to work tomorrow? We can't say for sure, but my bet would be that gravity and healing are still going to work tomorrow. If anyone want to bet against me on that, then please just leave your comments down below and I'll get back to you. If you enjoy information like this and you like learning how things really work, then make sure that you subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss anything. And please share this information with as many people as you can, because diabetes is a bigger problem than we have ever seen as far as health concerns. And the official version is that there's nothing you can do about it, but now you know better, so let them know. Thanks for watching.